I catch the error on a Tuesday, 43 years from planetfall, standing in Supply Bay 3 with a tablet in one hand and a head count that refuses to balance. The ration packs are stacked in rows along the bulkhead, each crate stamped with a production date and an expiration window. I run the count twice because the first pass shows 824 souls drawing meals this week. The ship carries 800. It has carried roughly 800 since we left orbit, 6 buried in the first decade, 4 born in the second, kept near that mark by planned births. The math is simple. The math is survival. I am Malcolm Keane. My title is Quartermaster, but the work is broader than the name suggests. I track what enters the ship and what leaves, who eats what and who needs more, which sections are running low on water, and which crews are hoarding spare parts they swore they returned. Every morning, I wake and ask the same question. Do we have enough to reach the end? Every night I update the ledgers and hope the answer stays yes. Today the answer is 3% off. 3% sounds small until you multiply it across 43 years. 3% means we hit starvation before we see landfall. 3% means someone made a mistake, or the counters are broken, or 824 people are eating when only 800 should exist. I close the tablet and head for the main corridor. The ship is called Harbour Light, and it moves through space the way a cathedral moves through centuries, slowly, inevitably, carrying everything that matters inside its walls. The hull is 11 decks tall and 600 meters long, built in modules that connect like vertebrae. Each module serves a function: hydroponics, medical, crew quarters, engineering, storage, the womb deck where future children grow in glass columns. I know every bay by the number stamped above the hatch and by the way the deck plates vibrate when machinery runs below. I pass a woman replacing a valve in the wall, her toolkit spread across the floor. She nods without looking up. Her name is Carla Palmer, and she drinks 1 cup of coffee each morning, black, no sugar, logged in the galley records for 9 years. I nod back and keep walking. The corridor slopes downward toward the hydroponics section, where my sister works. Nora Keane tends the grape cultivars and the strawberry beds, coaxing green things to grow under white lamps in rows of trays that stretch from deck to overhead. She is 2 years younger than me and better with living systems than I will ever be. I send her a message as I walk, yield holding. Her reply comes back in seconds. Stable. Trellis 6 needs a weld. I make a note. Everything on this ship needs something. The slipstream jump happened during my last sleep cycle. I woke to the hull shuddering, felt the air pressure shift in my jaw, and heard the all-clear klaxon before I could sit up. Folds are unpleasant but necessary. The ship punches through a crease in normal space, skips forward a few light years, and slides back out on the other side. The bridge crew handles it with the same boredom they bring to waste reclamation checks. By breakfast, no one mentioned it. We have jumped 72 times since launch. This one felt no different. I reached the crew commons at 0800 hours, the start of morning muster. The room is wide and low-ceilinged, lined with benches bolted to the deck. 200 people fill the space, standing in loose clusters by department. The noise is a steady murmur of shift changes and maintenance requests. I spot Dr. Lila Ames near the medical section, writing something on the cuff of her sleeve with a stylus. She catches my eye and lifts her chin in greeting. I return it. Captain Martin Cade stands at the front of the room beside the daily roster board. He is a lean man in his 50s with grey hair trimmed close and a voice that carries without effort. He built his career on cargo runs before signing on for the long haul, and he runs Harbour Light the way he ran those ships. Firm schedules, clear chains, no room for chaos. Environmental systems, Cade says, glancing at his tablet. We have a transfer joining the rotation today. A man steps forward from the crowd. He is maybe 30 years old, clean-shaven, wearing a pressed uniform with environmental systems patches on the shoulders. He extends a hand toward the nearest tech and smiles like he has done this 100 times. Lieutenant Jonah Morgan, the man says. "Looking forward to working with you all." I watch him shake hands, watch the techs nod and clap his shoulder. No one pauses. No one asks where he transferred from or why environmental needs another body when they have been fully staffed since year 6. The interaction is smooth, practiced, and completely wrong. I pull out my tablet and search the personnel database. Morgan, Jonah, Lieutenant. Born in transit aboard Green Valley, a sister ship that launched 2 years before us. Transferred to Harbour Light at year 8 per mutual agreement between captains. Service record includes a photo. Morgan, younger by maybe 5 years, leaning against a bright blue cargo drum with his sleeves rolled to the elbows. Performance reviews are sealed, which is standard for transfers. Meal charges date back to launch day, logged under his name in galley records I personally audited last month. I do not remember him. I look up. Morgan is laughing at something a junior tech said, his hand resting easy on a tool belt that looks worn in all the right places. He fits. That is the problem. He fits so well that my brain wants to supply a memory of him checking inventory or routing coolant or passing me in a corridor with a nod. But the memory does not come. I close the tablet and make my way toward the front of the room. Cade finishes muster and dismisses the crowd. I wait until the flow thins, then step into his line of sight. "Captain, a word." Cade glances at me, then gestures toward the side passage that leads to his office. We walk in silence until the hatch closes behind us. The office is small, just wide enough for a desk and 2 chairs. A single display on the wall shows the ship's course, a line stretching from Earth to a star called New Perth, 43 years left on the clock. Cade sits and folds his hands on the desk. "What is it, Keen?" "Lieutenant Morgan," I say. "When did he come aboard?" Cade's expression does not change. "Year 8. You have the file." "I have a file," I say. "I do not have a memory." Cade leans back in his chair. "You meet a lot of people. It has been over a decade." "I meet everyone," I say. "I audit meal logs, bunk assignments, shift trades. I signed his ration card. I should remember signing his ration card." Cade watches me, then taps his tablet. Morgan's file appears on the wall display. The photo, the service record, the transfer order with both captains' signatures. Everything is correct. Everything is real. "What are you saying, Malcolm?" "I am saying the numbers do not add. This week's ration draw is 3% over baseline. That does not happen unless we have more mouths than we should." Cade's jaw tightens. He closes the file and sets the tablet down carefully. "You think we have a stowaway?" "I think we have a discrepancy," I say. "I want to run a quiet audit. Verify Morgan's bone tag against the master registry. Interview environmental about why they need another tech. Track his movements for a few days." The bone tag is a small ceramic polymer chip embedded in the wrist of every crew member at birth. Under normal conditions, you cannot forge one. You cannot fake the surgical scar. If Morgan has a tag, he is crew. If his tag matches the registry, he has always been crew. Cade exhales slowly. "If you are wrong, you have just accused a man with a spotless record of being a ghost." "If I am right," I say, "we need to know where he has been sleeping and what he has been eating for the past decade." Cade holds my gaze, then nods once. "You have authorization. Quiet audit only. I do not want panic over a clerical error." "Understood." I leave the office and head for medical. Dr. Ames is in the main exam room, reviewing charts on a wall screen. She looks up when I enter, stylus still in hand, and raises an eyebrow. "Malcolm, you look tense." "I need you to pull a bone tag reading," I say. "Lieutenant Jonah Morgan, Environmental Systems. Cross-reference it against the master registry and send me the results." Ames sets the stylus down. "What am I looking for?" "Proof he exists." She studies me for a moment, then picks up her tablet without another word. I appreciate that about her. She does not need the whole story to start working. I spend the next 4 hours moving through the ship, checking inventory in every major bay. Water reclamation is pulling 5% over baseline. The galley has logged 23 additional meal requests this week. Laundry has processed 19 extra uniforms. The numbers climb in small, steady increments that compound into catastrophe. I stop in the environmental systems bay during the afternoon shift. Morgan is there, routing coolant through a manifold while 2 junior techs watch and take notes. He explains the valve sequence with patience, gesturing to each connection as he speaks. His uniform shows the right kind of wear, faded at the elbows, a small patch on the left thigh. He looks like a man who has worked this deck for years. One of the techs asks a question. Morgan answers without hesitation, then glances up and sees me watching from the doorway. He smiles and lifts a hand in greeting. I do not return it. I turn and walk back to my office. The office is a converted storage alcove on deck 5, barely large enough for a desk and a filing cabinet. I keep the physical ledgers here, the ones I write by hand because the ship's network has a habit of losing data during folds. Every ration draw, every supply request, every birth and death since launch is recorded in ink on paper that will outlast the computers. I pull the current ledger and flip to the crew roster. 800 names, written in columns. I count them twice. 800. Then I open the network logs and count the active meal cards. 824. My tablet pings. A message from Dr. Ames. Morgan's tag is legitimate. Registry match confirmed. Implant date listed as year 3. No anomalies detected. I read it twice, then closed the message. Morgan has a bone tag. The tag is real. The tag was implanted in year 3, which means he's been aboard for 17 years. The file says he transferred in year 8. Both facts cannot be true, but both facts are documented, verified, and impossible to dispute. I stand and walk to the main corridor, then down 2 decks to the crew quarters. I find Morgan's bunk assignment in the network. Section C, berth 19. I walk the section slowly, counting doorways. Berth 19 is halfway down the corridor, door closed, nameplate reading J. Vale in fresh print. I press the door chime. No answer. I check the network. Morgan is still on shift in environmental. I override the lock with quartermaster clearance and step inside. The bunk is small, identical to every other crew quarters on the ship. A bed folded into the wall, a desk with a chair, a locker for personal items. The desk holds a framed photo, Morgan, younger, standing with 3 other people in front of a viewport. The locker contains 2 spare uniforms, a toolkit, and a small box of personal items. A watch, a few letters, a patch from Green Valley with a stitched date I recognize. Everything is real. Everything belongs. I close the locker and leave the quarters, locking the door behind me. By evening, I have 2 more names. Petty Officer Sarah Drummond, assigned to waste reclamation. Her file shows a transfer from Bright Horizon in year 11. Her bone tag is legitimate. Her bunkmates swear they trained with her. Technical Specialist Hahn, assigned to auxiliary power. His file shows a promotion from Junior Tech in year 14. His bone tag is legitimate. His supervisor remembers signing his performance review. I pull both their files and compare them to my ledgers. Neither name appears in my handwritten rosters. The network insists they have been here for years. The ledgers say they have not. I send a message to Dr. Ames. Meet me in Supply Bay 3, now. She arrives 10 minutes later, tablet in hand, expression calm. I hand her my ledger and point to the crew roster. 800 names, I say. I wrote them myself. Morgan is not here. Drummond is not here. Hahn is not here. Ames flips through the pages, then checks her tablet. The network shows all 3 as active crew. The network is wrong. Or your ledger is incomplete. I am not incomplete, I say. I count every meal, every ration card, every shift trade. If someone boards this ship, I know. Ames closes the ledger and hands it back. So what are you saying? They appeared out of nothing. I'm saying the water reclamation logs show 5% overconsumption. I am saying we have bodies that do not match the manifest. I meet her eyes. We need to find where they are sleeping. She nods once, sharp and certain. I will pull medical records for everyone who has visited the clinic in the past week, see if there is a pattern. I will cross-reference bunk assignments with shift logs, see if anyone is sharing space who should not be. What about Cade? Not yet, I say. Not until we know what we are looking at. Ames tucks her tablet under her arm and heads for the hatch. She pauses at the threshold and glances back. Malcolm, if you are right about this, I know. She leaves. I close the ledger and lock it in the cabinet, then sit at the desk and stare at the wall. The ship is 43 years from landfall. We have 800 people, 67 gestation columns, and enough food to reach the end if nothing goes wrong. The math is simple. The math is survival. Somewhere on this ship, 24 people are eating meals I did not authorize and sleeping in bunks I did not assign. They have files that prove they belong and tags that confirm they are human. They have memories, friends, and histories that hold up under scrutiny. And I have no idea where they came from. I pull 3 people close the next morning before the shift change floods the corridors. The first is Ross Gallagher, Chief of Security. He is 52 years old with a steel baton on his hip and a limp from a maintenance accident in Year 9 that crushed 2 vertebrae. He does not speculate. When I tell him we have crew appearing with perfect files and no memory trail, he asks one question. How do I verify? Cross-reference shift logs against security footage. Find gaps. He nods once and leaves. The second is Erin Pike, systems analyst. She is 37, wears her hair pulled back tight, and can tell you which printer produced a document by the way the head jitters along the left margin. She built the ship's database architecture in the year before launch and knows every timestamp, every backup protocol, every place a forged entry might hide. When I show her Morgan's file, she opens it on her tablet and scrolls without speaking. After 2 minutes, she taps a line of code buried in the metadata. This was edited, she says. When? 4 days ago, during the fold. She closes the tablet. I will map every file touched in that window. The third is Dr. Ames. She already knows the problem. I do not need to convince her. We meet in a storage alcove off the main corridor on deck 4, the 4 of us standing in a space meant for 2. Gallagher leans against the bulkhead, arms crossed. Pike holds her tablet like a shield. Ames writes something on her sleeve with a stylus. We divide the ship, I say. Gallagher takes security logs and footage. Pike takes network files and timestamps. Ames takes medical records. I take resource allocation. We are looking for where the files meet the bodies. And when we find it, Gallagher asks, we bring it to Cade. Gallagher pushes off the bulkhead and walks out. Pike follows. Ames caps her stylus and meets my eyes. You already know where they are, she says. I know the numbers do not add. That is not what I asked. I do not answer. She leaves. I spend the morning in Supply Bay 2, counting tool requisitions. Every wrench, every spool of wire, every replacement part is logged when it leaves the inventory and logged again when it returns. In the past week, 19 tools have been checked out and not returned. The crew members who signed for them are names I do not recognize. The signatures match the ones in their personnel files. I pull the files and search for patterns. Nothing connects them. Different departments, different shifts, different quarters. Then I notice the dates. Every requisition was logged between 0300 and 0500 hours, the window when most crew are asleep and the corridors are empty. I send a message to Gallagher. Security footage for Supply Bay 2 past week 03 to 05. His reply comes back in under a minute. No footage. Camera logs show operational, but files are corrupted. I close the tablet and head for medical. Pike is already there when I arrive, standing beside Ames in the records room with her tablet open. She does not look up. Every new arrival has logged at least 1 medical visit in the past 4 days, Pike says. The reason is listed as bone tag integrity verification. That is not a real procedure, Ames says. The forms have your signature. Ames takes the tablet and scrolls through the logs. Her jaw tightens. I did not write these. But you signed them, Pike says. No. Something wrote them in my handwriting. Ames hands the tablet back. Where are the visits logged? Womb deck medbay. Ames and I look at each other. The womb deck is 8 levels down, a section most crew avoid unless they are scheduled to work there. It holds the gestation columns, the future children of the ship, suspended in glass towers filled with nutrient gel, monitored by servo arms and automated systems that turn and test and feed. Most berths aboard Harbour Light are planned years in advance, parceled out to maintain genetic diversity and population balance. The deck is quiet, clinical, and nearly always empty. When is the next shift rotation down there? I ask. Pike checks her tablet. Not until tonight. Maintenance only. Good. I turn to Ames. We go now. The womb deck sits below engineering, accessible through a service ladder that drops the last 3 levels in a narrow shaft. Gallagher meets us at the top of the ladder with a small pack slung over his shoulder. Inside, gloves, a handheld scanner, a pry bar, and a cutting torch the size of a pen. He hands me a pair of gloves without a word. We descend in silence. The ladder rungs are cold under my palms. At the bottom, a hatch opens into a long corridor lit by pale work lamps mounted along the overhead. The walls are bare metal stamped with maintenance codes. The deck plates vibrate faintly underfoot, the rhythm of the nutrient pumps below. The gestation columns stand in rows along the main chamber, each one about as tall as 2 men and wide enough to hold a curled body. The glass is thick, slightly frosted, and lit from within by amber lights. I count 43 columns active, each containing a developing fetus suspended in translucent gel. Servo arms move along tracks overhead, pausing at each column to check readings and adjust temperature. The room is silent except for the faint hum of the pumps and the occasional click of a servo locking into position. Ames walks to the nearest column and presses her hand to the glass. Inside, a fetus no larger than her fist floats in the center, connected to the nutrient line by a thin cord. She checks the monitor mounted on the column's base, then moves to the next one. Pike stands near the entrance, tablet in hand, watching the feed lines that run along the walls. The procedure logs say patients were brought here for scans, but there is no scanning equipment in this room. Medbay is through there. Ames points to a door at the far end of the chamber. We cross the room. Gallagher reaches the door first and tries the handle. Locked. He pulls a keycard from his pocket, security override, and swipes it. The door opens with a click. The medbay is small, just large enough for an exam table and a supply cabinet. The table is clean. The cabinet is locked. Everything looks exactly as it should, which means nothing. Pike checks the network logs on her tablet. 4 procedures logged here in the past 3 days. Morgan, Drummond, Hahn, and a tech named Gibson. What was done? Ames asks. Bone tag integrity verification. Pike looks up. Duration, 11 minutes each. Ames opens the supply cabinet. Inside, standard medical equipment, sterilized instruments in sealed bags, vials of local anesthetic. Nothing unusual. She closes the cabinet and turns to the exam table, running her gloved hand along the surface. At the edge, near where a patient's wrist would rest, she finds a small brown stain about the size of a thumbprint. She scrapes it with a scalpel blade and collects the sample in a vial. Blood. Recent. Gallagher moves to the corner of the room where the wall meets the floor. He crouches, pressing his palm flat against the deck plate. This section is warmer than it should be. I kneel beside him and touch the metal. He is right. The heat radiates through my glove, a steady warmth that has no source. Pike checks the ship's thermal map on her tablet. Nothing logged. Temperature should be ambient. Gallagher stands and scans the wall with his handheld unit. The display shows a density reading 3 times higher than standard bulkhead. Something is behind here. The nutrient lines run under this deck, Ames says. Could be a leak. Leaks do not hold heat. Gallagher sets the scanner down and pulls the pry bar from his pack. We open it. I help him find the seam where the deck plate meets the wall. The pry bar fits into the gap with a thin scrape of metal on metal. Gallagher leans his weight into the bar and the plate lifts with a groan. We pull it aside and look down. Beneath the deck, where the nutrient lines should run in clean parallel rows, something else has grown. It is pale, almost white, with a surface texture like ceramic that has been fired too many times. Smooth in some places, rough and cracked in others. The shape branches like a root system. Thick cords splitting into thinner threads that wrap around the pipes and burrow into the seams between bulkhead sections. Where it touches metal, the metal shows a fine layer of rust. Where it touches the nutrient lines, it has fused to the plastic, creating junctions that look deliberate. I reach down with my gloved hand and touch the surface. It is warm, body temperature. The material gives slightly under pressure, then firms up like cartilage. What is it? Pike asks. I do not know. Ames kneels beside me and examines the growth without touching it. But it is connected to the ship's systems. Gallagher moves his scanner over the mass, detecting organic compounds, calcium, keratin, collagen, also detecting trace metals and polymers. Is it alive? I cannot tell. I watch the growth. Near the thickest branch, something glints in the pale light. I lean closer and see a tool embedded in the mass. A wrench, swallowed handle deep, held tight as if the growth closed around it and never let go. I recognize the make. It came from my inventory. I stand and step back from the opening. We need samples. We need to know what this is made of and where it came from. Ames pulls a sample kit from her pocket and uses a scalpel to scrape a thin layer from the surface. The material resists, then flakes off in small chips that she collects in a vial. When she seals the vial, the chips inside continue moving for several seconds, sliding against the glass like they are trying to find purchase. It is still active, she says quietly. Gallagher replaces the deck plate and stands. We bring this to Cade. Not yet, I say. We do not know what we are showing him. We need more. More what? More proof. Ames runs the sample analysis in her lab, while the rest of us wait in the corridor outside. Through the window I can see her moving between instruments, her hands steady as she pipettes liquid into slides and places them under magnification. Pike stands beside me, tablet open, scrolling through network logs. Gallagher leans against the wall, baton tapping a slow rhythm against his thigh. After an hour, Ames opens the door. The sample contains human tissue, she says. Skin cells, bone fragments, blood. Also synthetic polymers similar to what we use in prosthetics, and a ceramic composite I have never seen before. Human tissue, Pike repeats, mixed with materials that should not be in a human body. Ames hands me a printout showing the analysis. It is like someone tried to build a person from scratch and used whatever was available. Gallagher stops tapping his baton. You are saying that thing down there is making people. I am saying the materials match. Ames meets his eyes. I need to examine one of the new arrivals, directly. I find Jonah Morgan in the environmental systems bay during the afternoon shift. He is alone, running diagnostics on a coolant manifold, his tablet propped on a tool chest beside him. When I enter, he looks up and smiles. Keen. Something I can help with. Medical needs to run a routine check, I say. Updated health screens for all crew who transferred in the past decade. Morgan sets down his tool. I had a physical last month. New protocol, captain's orders. He studies me for a moment, then nods. When? Now. He follows me to medical without questions. Ames is waiting in the main exam room with her instruments laid out on a tray. She gestures to the exam table. "This will take about 20 minutes, she says. "I need to verify your bone tag readings and run a blood panel." Morgan rolls up his sleeve and sits on the table. The bone tag is visible under the skin of his left wrist, a small bump about the size of a lentil. Ames runs a scanner over it and checks the display. "Tag is reading normal," she says. Then, to me, "I need to sample it. Partial lift only." Morgan tenses. "Extract?" "We have been seeing some failures in older implants," Ames says, her voice calm and professional. "Sampling is standard. Partial lift, no replacement today. Local anesthetic, 15 minutes, minimal discomfort." "I have never heard of this." "It is new," I say. Morgan looks between us, then nods slowly. "All right." Ames preps the site with antiseptic and injects the local anesthetic. Morgan winces but does not pull away. She makes a small incision along his wrist with a scalpel, then uses forceps to grip the tag and partially lift it, shears a sliver for analysis. The moment the tag shifts from the surrounding tissue, Morgan's heart rate spikes on the monitor. His pupils dilate. The tag itself discharges a small current that jumps from the forceps to the metal tray with a sharp snap. Ames drops the sliver into a shielded container and it immediately begins cooling, the surface temperature dropping from warm to cold in seconds. Morgan gasps and leans forward, gripping the edge of the table. "I feel—" He stops. His eyes track something on the wall that is not there. "Morgan." I step closer. "What do you see?" "I do not remember." He blinks hard, then looks at his wrist where the incision is already being sealed with surgical glue. "What just happened?" "Your tag was failing," Ames says. "You are fine now." She hands him a sealed dressing and aftercare instructions and gestures to the door. Morgan takes it, still unsteady, and leaves without another word. Per new protocol, replacement tags are held for supervised implantation after verification. Ames waits until the door closes, then picks up the shielded container and examines the extracted tag under magnification. After a moment, she gestures for me to look. Under the lens, the tag shows a hairline channel running through the center, so thin it would be invisible without magnification. The channel extends from one end to the other, creating a path that should not exist in a standard implant. "What is it for?" I ask. "I do not know, but it is not in the specifications for regulation tags." She sets the container down. "I want to scan the others. Drummond, Hahn, Gibson." "Do it quietly." The call comes 3 hours later, during the night shift. A man collapses on a gangway between Deck 3 and Deck 4. 2 crew members drag him to the nearest bench and someone sends for medical. By the time Ames arrives, the man is convulsing, his left arm locked rigid and trembling. I reach the gangway 5 minutes behind her. The man is Petty Officer Colin Ward, assigned to waste reclamation. His file says he transferred from Bright Horizon in year 12. I do not remember him. Ames kneels beside him and tries to stabilize his arm. Ward screams, a short, choked sound, and then his wrist opens. The skin splits along a line so straight it looks surgical. Beneath the skin, a second set of bones pushes up, each one about as long as a child's finger and pale as chalk. They flex and bend at joints that should not exist. Ward's blood runs dark along his forearm and drips onto the deck, carrying with it fine, translucent threads that cling to the metal grating. Gallagher arrives with 2 security officers. They hold Ward down while Ames cuts the threads with surgical scissors. The threads tighten as she cuts them, contracting like muscle, trying to pull the wound closed from the inside. Ward dies with his eyes open, staring at a point on the bulkhead above Gallagher's shoulder. Ames checks for a pulse, then sits back on her heels. Her gloves are dark with blood. She looks at me without speaking. "Get him to the morgue," Gallagher says to his officers. "No one talks about this." In the morgue, Ames opens Ward's chest with a bone saw. I stand beside the table and watch as she peels back the ribs and exposes the heart. Wrapped around the organ, tight as a harness, is a coil of the same translucent thread we saw beneath the womb deck. It spirals around the ventricles and burrows into the muscle tissue, creating a structure that looks deliberate, like someone threaded a needle through living flesh and pulled it taut. Ames takes a photograph with her tablet, then uses forceps to lift one strand. The thread is strong. She has to cut it with surgical shears to remove a sample. When she places the sample under magnification, the structure becomes clear. Woven fibers, each one thinner than a hair, bundled together into a cord. "It grew through him," she says quietly. "From the tag, through the tissue, into the heart." I take the tablet and study the photograph. The coil is not random. It follows the natural curves of the organ, wrapping in a pattern that maximizes contact without restricting function. Whoever, whatever, built this understood anatomy. "Send the photo to Pike and Gallagher," I say. "Then meet me in Supply Bay 3. Ames wipes her gloves on a cloth and picks up her tablet. "What are we doing?" "Finding where the thread leads." The message from Nora comes at 0200 hours. 3 words. "Come to Hydro." I pull on my uniform and head down 6 levels. The corridors are empty this deep into the night cycle, lit only by emergency strips along the baseboards. My boots sound loud against the deck plates. Hydroponics spans 2 full decks, connected by open shafts where the tallest plants can grow toward the overhead lamps. The air here carries moisture from the irrigation misters, and the walls are lined with trays of green things growing in rows. Nora stands near the grape trellis at the far end, arms crossed, staring at a man I have never seen before. He is maybe 40, wearing a maintenance tech uniform, crouched beside the trellis with a welding torch in one hand. When he sees me, he stands and smiles. "You must be Malcolm," he says. "Nora talks about you." I look at my sister. She does not uncross her arms. "This is David Gibson," she says. "He says we worked the same rotation in year 15. "We did," Gibson says. "You showed me how to splice the irrigation lines when the main feed cracked. Saved 3 weeks of yield." Nora's jaw tightens. "I have never done irrigation work. That is engineering." Gibson's smile fades slightly. He glances at the welding torch, then back at her. "You had a bruise on your forearm. Right here." He touches his own arm, just below the elbow. "You slipped on wet decking near the strawberry beds and caught yourself on the corner of a tray. It left a mark for 2 weeks." I watch Nora's face go still. "How do you know that?" she asks quietly. "Because I was there," Gibson says. "I helped you up." "No one helped me up." Nora looks at me. "I was alone. It was early shift. I told you about it that night." I step forward, putting myself between Gibson and my sister. "What section are you assigned to?" "Environmental. Coolant systems." He gestures to the trellis. "But I help where I can." Nora mentioned the weld, so I thought I would take a look. I check my tablet. David Gibson, maintenance tech, assigned to environmental systems in year 14. His file shows a promotion from junior tech, performance reviews that are detailed and positive, a photograph of him standing in front of a reactor housing with a wrench in one hand. Everything correct. Everything real. "Who authorized you to work this section?" Gibson blinks. "I do not need authorization to help." "Yes," I say, "you do." He sets the welding torch down carefully on a workbench, then raises both hands slightly, palms out. "I did not mean to overstep. Nora," I say without looking away from Gibson, "go to your quarters. Now." She leaves. I hear her footsteps on the ladder, fast and angry. Gibson watches her go, then meets my eyes. "Did I do something wrong?" "Stay away from my sister. We are friends." "No, you are not." I turn and follow Nora up the ladder, leaving Gibson standing beside the trellis with his hands still raised. Pike finds me 2 hours later in Supply Bay 3. I am counting ration packs for the 5th time this week, trying to make the numbers add when they will not. She sets her tablet on the counter and opens a schematic of the womb deck. I trace the fiber residue from Ward's body, she says. It matches the growth beneath the medbay, but the concentration pattern suggests a source point farther down the corridor. How far? 60 meters past the main chamber. There is a service tunnel that runs parallel to the nutrient lines. She taps the schematic. This section shows maintenance serials I have never seen before. The numbers do not match our standard format. Show me. Gallagher meets us at the service tunnel entrance with 2 security officers and a toolbox. The tunnel is narrow, just wide enough to walk single file, with exposed pipes running along the overhead and walls. The deck plates here are older than the rest of the ship, stamped with manufacturer codes that predate our launch by decades. Surplus materials, repurposed from decommissioned vessels. We move quietly, Gallagher in front with a hand torch, me behind him, Pike and the officers following. The light catches on condensation beading along the pipes. 50 meters in, Gallagher stops and raises a hand. The tunnel ends at a hatch I have never seen documented. It is round, maybe a meter across, sealed with bolts cast from a dull grey alloy that does not match any material we use in standard construction. The metal shows no rust, no wear, no sign of age. Around the rim, maintenance serials are etched in a font that looks machine-precise. Pike photographs the serials and runs them through her tablet. These do not exist in the database. The format is wrong. Gallagher sets the toolbox down and pulls a socket wrench. We open it. He works the bolts in sequence, each one turning with a resistance that suggests the hatch has not been opened in years, or never. When the last bolt comes free, he grips the wheel at the center and turns. The hatch swings inward on hinges that move silently. Beyond, a chamber. It is small, no larger than my office, with a ceiling low enough that I have to duck. The walls are the same pale material we found beneath the womb deck, smooth as fired ceramic, but warm when I touch it. 6 work lamps bolted in a ring overhead provide greenish light that makes everything look surgical. In the center of the chamber stands a structure I do not have words for. It is built from struts that resemble vertebrae, stacked and fused into columns about as tall as a man. Between the columns, a platform, or a bed, sits at waist height, constructed from the same pale material as the walls. On the bed lie human forms in various stages of construction. 3 bodies. One is nearly complete, skin stretched over muscle and bone, eyes closed, chest still. The second is half-formed, tendons visible where skin has not yet covered the shoulder and ribs. The third is skeletal, bones laid out in anatomical order with threads of translucent fiber climbing from joint to joint like someone stringing a marionette. Each body has a bone tag already embedded in the left wrist. Ames steps past me and moves to the nearest form, the complete one. She presses a gloved finger to the shoulder. The skin dents under pressure, then springs back. She checks the pulse point at the neck. Nothing. It is not breathing, she says. Pike scans the bed with her tablet. Detecting active nutrient flow through the base. The feed lines run from here back to the womb deck. It is eating the same meals as the children. Gallagher moves along the perimeter, examining the walls. How long has this been here? The serials suggest... Pike stops. She looks at her tablet, then at the hatch. These markings predate the ship's construction. This chamber should not exist. The lamps overhead pop one after another, with sharp cracks like glass breaking under pressure. Fragments rain down. In the sudden darkness, something moves on the bed. The complete form's hand flexes. Fingers curl into a fist, then straighten. "Get out," Gallagher says. We turn for the hatch. Behind us, a sound like wet rope being pulled taut. I glance back and see threads whipping from beneath the bed, thin and fast, seeking heat. One wraps around Gallagher's calf and tightens. He drops to one knee with a grunt. I grab the emergency shears from his toolbox and cut the thread. It recoils with a snap like a severed cable, spraying clear fluid across the deck. More threads lash from the walls, wrapping the columns, seeking purchase. The half-formed body sits up, ribs bending at angles that should crack bone. Its jaw opens, but no sound comes out. Ames pulls Gallagher upright and we haul him through the hatch. Pike is the last out. She slams the hatch closed and Gallagher spins the wheel, sealing it. From inside, a single heavy thump against the metal, then silence. We stand in the tunnel, breathing hard. Gallagher's pant leg is torn where the thread wrapped him. Beneath the fabric, his skin shows a red welt that looks like a burn. Back in medical, Ames treats Gallagher's leg while I stand at the window and watch the corridor. Pike sits at the desk, downloading the photographs from her tablet to a secure drive. Gallagher does not speak while Ames wraps the wound. When she finishes, she hands him a dose of anti-inflammatory and steps back. The welt will fade in a few days. If it starts to spread, come back immediately. Gallagher swallows the medication and stands. What do we tell Cade? Everything, I say. He will want to see it. Then we show him. Pike looks up from the desk. The new arrivals are still appearing. 3 more logged in the past 12 hours, all with perfect files, all claiming they have been here for years. I turn from the window. How many total? 41. The number sits heavy in the room. 800 crew, 41 additions. The ration math collapses in my head. Food, water, air, all stretched beyond capacity. We have 43 years left. At this rate, we will not make it half that distance. We need to stop the feed, Ames says. Cut the nutrient lines to the chamber. That means cutting the lines to the gestation columns, Pike says. Then we reroute. Give the columns enough to survive and starve whatever is in that room. Engineering says partial flows create pressure spikes, I say. The lines could rupture. And if we do nothing, the ship starves. Ames meets my eyes. Choose. I do not answer. The choice is not mine to make. I go to my quarters and sit on the edge of the bed with a magnet in my palm. It is small, pried from a tool cabinet, barely larger than my thumbnail. I hold it above my left wrist, where my bone tag sits beneath the skin. The magnet twitches. I move it higher. No pull. Lower, directly over the tag. The magnet shifts in my palm, drawn down like iron to iron. Standard bone tags are ceramic and polymer. They do not attract magnets. I set the magnet on the desk and open a drawer. Inside, a razor blade, antiseptic wipes, gauze. I clean the blade and press it to my forearm just above the tag. The cut is shallow, a thin red line that wells with blood. I wipe it clean and look. Beneath the skin, something glints. I press the edges of the cut, and a small shard pushes to the surface. Pale grey, hard as stone, no larger than a grain of rice. I pull it free with tweezers and set it on a cloth. The material is cold to the touch, cooling further as I watch. After a minute, it stops radiating heat entirely. I wrap my arm in gauze and sit staring at the shard. It looks like bone. It feels like ceramic. I do not know what it is doing inside me, or when it was placed there, or what function it serves. I do not know if I'm original crew or if I walked out of that chamber with memories that fit too well and a file that cannot be questioned. I wrap the shard in the cloth and put it in my pocket. Then I go to work, because the ship does not stop needing me just because I have stopped trusting my own history. The crew commons is louder than usual during the evening meal. Voices rise and fall in arguments that stop when I pass. At one table, a woman I do not recognize sits eating beside 2 crew I have known for years. At another, a man with a fresh uniform and no wear on his boots laughs at a joke while 3 others lean away from him. The ship is splitting. I see it in the way people sit, original crew clustering on one side of the room, new arrivals spread among them like seeds planted in hostile soil. I see it in the way Gallagher's officers watch the crowd with hands near their batons. I see it in the ration line, which has grown long enough to stretch into the corridor. Nora sits alone at a corner table, staring at her meal. I sit across from her. "He knew about the bruise," she says quietly. "No one knew about the bruise except you. He is not your friend. Then what is he?" I do not answer. She picks at her food without eating. "The yield is down 3% this week," she says. "The misters are running longer than they should. Someone is drawing extra water." I will check the logs. "Malcolm." She looks up, and I see fear in her eyes for the first time in years. What is happening to the ship? I want to tell her it will be fine. I want to say I have a plan, that the numbers will balance, that we will reach planetfall with everyone whole. But I have never lied to my sister, and I will not start now. "I do not know yet," I say, "but I am working on it." She nods and goes back to staring at her meal. I leave the commons and head for the bridge. Captain Cade listens without interrupting as I lay out everything. Morgan's file, the growth beneath the womb deck, Ward's death, the fabrication chamber. Ames and Gallagher stand behind me. Pike projects the photographs on the wall display, the pale material fused to the ship's ribs, the threads wrapped around Ward's heart, the bodies on the bed. When I finish, Cade sits back in his chair and looks at the images for a long time. "You are telling me the ship is building people," he says. "Something is. And it is using our resources to do it. How many total?" 41 confirmed, possibly more. Cade closes his eyes and rubs his temples. "Options. Cut the nutrient feed to the chamber," Ames says. "Starve it. That kills the gestation columns. Not if we reroute partial flow. Give the columns minimum necessary and cut everything else. Engineering says partial flow is unstable." "Engineering is wrong," Gallagher says. "Or they do not want to take the risk." Cade opens his eyes. "What risk?" "Some of the columns will not survive reduced flow," Ames says quietly. "The youngest ones, the ones still in early development." The room goes silent. On the wall display, the photograph of the fabrication chamber fills the screen. Bodies in progress, threads climbing bone, tags already embedded. Cade stands and walks to the window overlooking the ship's main corridor. Far below, crew move through their routines, unaware that the captain is weighing their children's lives against the survival of everyone aboard. "How many?" he asks. 20 to 30% mortality among the youngest," Ames says. "Possibly higher." "And if we do nothing?" "The ship runs out of food in 18 years, I say. "We all die." Cade turns from the window. His face is tired, older than I have ever seen it. "Draft the protocol," he says. "I want every step documented. I want engineering oversight. I want medical standing by for every column." He looks at me. "And I want you to sign the order, Malcolm. This is quartermaster authority. The resource allocation is yours." I feel the weight settle, not on my shoulders, in my chest, where it will stay. "Yes, sir." Cade dismisses Ames and Gallagher, then gestures for me to stay. When the door closes, he sits at his desk and opens a drawer. Inside is a small metal flask. He pours 2 measures into cups and hands me one. "Off the record," he says. "Do you think we can kill it?" I drink. The liquid burns. "Yes." "Do you think it matters?" I look at him. "Sir, if this thing came through the fold with us, if it built itself into the ship's bones and started making crew..." He stops, drinks. "What is to say it will stop when we cut off the feed? What is to say it is not already too deep to remove?" I set the cup down. "Then we die trying." Cade nods slowly. "Get your team ready. You start the burn at 0600 hours tomorrow." I leave the bridge and head for my quarters. Inside, I sit at the desk and pull out the shard wrapped in cloth. I hold it up to the light and watch how it catches the glow, cold and inert. I could cut deeper. I could take this to Ames and ask her to tell me what I am. I could demand a scan, a biopsy, proof that my memories are mine and not assembled from stolen fragments. Instead, I put the shard back in my pocket and open my ledger. I write the new head count in careful longhand, refusing digits. 840 souls aboard Harbour Light. I add the names of the new arrivals, each one copied from their personnel files. I sign the page and close the book. Then I draft the killing protocol. It takes 2 hours. Every step, every contingency, every tool we will need. Position the slagging unit at the chamber base. Cure the growth into brittle ceramic. Break it apart with pry bars and haul the pieces to the incinerator. Monitor the gestation columns for heat damage and stabilize any that show distress. Accept the losses. I write that last line 3 times before it stays. Accept the losses. Not prevent or minimize. Accept. Because there is no version of this plan where everyone lives. I sign the protocol at the bottom and send it to Cade, Ames, and Gallagher. At 0500 hours, I meet Ames, Gallagher, and 2 volunteers in the equipment bay. The volunteers are both engineering techs, Carla Palmer, who I passed in the corridor weeks ago replacing a valve, and a younger man named Peter Atkins who specializes in thermal systems. They stand beside the slagging unit without speaking. The unit is a portable furnace on a wheeled frame, designed to cure composite materials into stable ceramic for emergency hull patches. It draws power from a battery pack the size of a footlocker and can reach temperatures high enough to fuse metal. We have 3 aboard. This is the only one rated for sustained operation. Gallagher loads a toolbox onto a handcart. Pry bars, emergency shears, insulated gloves rated to 500 degrees, a length of chain and a medical kit. Ames adds her own equipment, portable monitors, syringes of stabilizing compound, 2 liters of saline in sealed bags. The columns will fog when the temperature spikes, she says. I will not be able to see inside until they clear. Some of them will not clear. No one responds. We all read the protocol. We suit up in heat gear, thick coveralls with reflective plating across the chest and back, gloves that extend past the elbows, face shields that seal at the collar. The suits are designed for reactor maintenance and make every movement awkward, but they will keep us alive long enough to finish the work. Gallagher checks his wrist chrono. 0545. We move in 15. I pull on my gloves and test the grip. The material is stiff, designed to resist heat rather than provide dexterity. I pick up a pry bar and the weight feels wrong through the padding. Ames adjusts her face shield and looks at me through the clear panel. The captain authorized medical discretion. If more than 10 columns show critical distress, I can call a stop. You will not call a stop, I say. Malcolm, we stop. The growth keeps feeding. We finish this now or we finish nothing. She does not argue. She knows the math as well as I do. At 0600 hours, we descend to the womb deck. The gestation columns stand in their rows, lit by the pale work lamps overhead. 43 active pregnancies, each one scheduled years in advance, each one carrying genetic material chosen for diversity and health. The servo arms move along their tracks, clicking into position to check readings. The pumps below maintain their rhythm. Ames moves to the nearest column and presses her palm to the glass. Inside, a fetus floats in translucent gel, connected to the nutrient line by a thin umbilical cord. She checks the monitor at the base. 18 weeks development. Stable. She moves to the next column, then the next, cataloguing each one. I watch her write the data on her sleeve with a stylus, the numbers cramped and small. When she reaches the end of the first row, she looks back at me. 12 are under 20 weeks. They will not survive reduced flow. Keep working. We haul the slagging unit down the service tunnel toward the fabrication chamber. The wheels catch on the deck plates, and we have to drag the frame forward in short, grinding pulls. Gallagher walks ahead with the cutting torch, marking our path with reflective tape every 10 meters so we can find our way back through smoke. The hatch at the end of the tunnel is still sealed. Gallagher spins the wheel and pulls it open. Inside, the chamber is exactly as we left it. The bodies on the bed remain in their stages of assembly, complete, half-formed, skeletal. The work lamps overhead are dark, the shattered fragments swept into corners. The walls expand and contract in a rhythm slow enough that I might imagine it if I were not watching the seams between sections shift. "It is breathing," Palmer says quietly. "It is pumping," I say. "Same as the ship." We position the slagging unit at the base of the bed and connect the battery pack. Atkins runs a thermal probe along the walls, checking for weak points. The readings show the material is thicker here than beneath the womb deck, layered in sections like growth rings in a tree. "We will need at least 20 minutes at full temperature," Atkins says. "The outer layer will cure first. The inner sections will take longer." "How long before the columns start to overheat?" 15 minutes, maybe less. Ames stands at the hatch with her tablet open, monitoring the column readings remotely. "Start now, or do not start at all." I activate the slagging unit. The battery pack hums as it channels power to the heating elements. The air inside the chamber shimmers and my face shield fogs at the edges. The walls begin to change. The pale material darkens to grey, then to chalk white. Fine cracks appear where the heat penetrates deepest. The bed structure holds its shape, but the surface blisters, small bubbles forming and popping with soft snaps. Then the threads come. They lash from beneath the bed, thin and fast, wrapping the legs of the slagging unit and pulling tight. Gallagher swings a pry bar and severs one thread. It recoils and sprays clear fluid across the deck. More threads whip from the walls, seeking heat, wrapping around anything that moves. One catches my boot. I feel the pressure through the suit, not painful yet, but building. I cut it with the emergency shears and the thread contracts, leaving a dark stain on the reflective plating. On the bed, the complete form sits upright. Its chest does not rise, its eyes do not open. But its hand reaches forward, fingers extending toward Gallagher with joints that bend too far. "Keep cutting," Gallagher says. We work in rotations. One person holds position at the slagging unit, adjusting the temperature and angle, while the others cut threads and break the brittle sections as they cure. The heat builds until my face shield is slick with condensation, and my hands inside the gloves are wet with sweat. The chamber fills with smoke, not from fire, but from the material itself as it cures and releases gas. The work lamps overhead are gone, shattered in the first wave of threads. We navigate by the glow of the slagging unit and the pale light filtering from the tunnel. "Columns are fogging," Ames calls from the hatch. "Temperature in the womb deck is climbing." "How many critical?" 3 so far." I drive the slagging unit forward, jamming the wheels against a ridge in the deck until the frame locks. The heat washes the chamber in waves. Palmer and Atkins work the pry bars, breaking sections of wall as they turn brittle. Each piece comes away with a crack like dry branches breaking underfoot. The half-formed body on the bed collapses as the structure beneath it fractures. The ribs cave inward, and the skull tilts at an angle that would kill a living person. The threads wrapped around its torso tighten, then go slack. 6 columns critical, Ames says. Her voice is steady, but I hear the strain beneath it. Gallagher wraps the chain around the base of the bed and pulls. The ceramic cracks and a section breaks free, revealing the mass underneath, a tangle of cords and struts that looks like a rib cage turned inside out. I step into range and the thing reaches for me with what might be a hand or might be something that learned the shape of a hand from touching one. It grabs my forearm. The pressure is immediate, sharp enough that I feel it through the suit. The fingers, if they are fingers, do not have nails, but they have grip. I scream, and Gallagher brings the chain down, wrapping the torso and hauling backward. The cords tear from the plumbing with wet pops. Fluid sprays across the deck, slick and dark. The torso thrashes once, then goes still. We drag it to the tunnel and leave it there, wrapped in chain. 9 columns, Ames says. I return to the chamber and turn the slagging unit to maximum. The battery pack groans under the load. The temperature gauge climbs past 700 degrees, and the walls begin to buckle. Entire sections peel away from the frame, falling in sheets that shatter when they hit the deck. Atkins and Palmer work with the pry bars, breaking the remaining structure into fragments small enough to haul. The work is brutal. Swing, break, drag, repeat. My breath comes in short gasps that fog the inside of my face shield. 12 columns, Ames says quietly. The slagging unit stutters, then dies. The battery pack is empty. Atkins disconnects it, and we stand in the chamber, surrounded by fragments of ceramic and the skeletal remains of the bed. The walls are scorched, cracked, and empty. The threads are still. I pull off my gloves and touch the nearest fragment with my bare hand. It is hot enough to sting, but cooling fast. I wrap it in insulated cloth and carry it to the tunnel. We spend the next 2 hours hauling fragments to the incinerator bay. Each load is heavy, awkward, and sharp enough to cut through the gloves if we are not careful. When the last piece is loaded, Gallagher seals the incinerator and starts the burn. Through the viewport, I watch the fragments glow red, then white, then crumble to ash. Ames meets me in the corridor outside the womb deck. Her face shield is pushed back and her coveralls are dark with sweat. She holds her tablet in both hands. 12 dead, she says. 4 more with thermal damage that may shorten development. The rest are stable. I nod. The number sits in my chest like a stone. The new arrivals have stopped, she continues. No one has logged in the past 8 hours. The growth is gone. She looks at me, then turns and walks back to the columns. I follow. Inside the main chamber, the servo arms continue their work, clicking into position and checking readings as if nothing has changed. The columns stand in their rows, glass fogged from the heat but slowly clearing. Ames moves from column to column, cataloguing the survivors. At the end of the second row, she stops. The column is dark, no heartbeat on the monitor. Inside, the fetus floats motionless in gel that has turned cloudy. Ames presses her hand to the glass and stands there without speaking. I move to the next column. The monitor shows a heartbeat, slow but steady. Inside, the fetus is smaller than my fist, curled tight with its hands pressed to its face. It will live. It will grow. It will be born into a ship that has just killed 12 others to keep it fed. Ames catalogues the rest in silence. When she finishes, she sends the report to Cade and sets her tablet down on a workbench. Go get some rest, I say. You have been on shift for 14 hours. She nods slowly, picks up her tablet and leaves. I stand alone in the chamber and count the columns. 31 active, 12 empty, their glass already being cleaned by the automated systems in preparation for future use. The numbers balance differently now. Fewer mouths to feed, fewer futures to protect. I update my ledger in my head, writing the new totals in longhand because digits are for machines and I need to remember that these are lives, not just numbers on a page. The crew notices the change within days. The ration lines shorten. The water reclamation stabilizes. The new arrivals remain, 41 people who showed up with perfect files and histories, but no more appear. Jonah Morgan continues working in environmental systems. He is competent, patient with junior techs, and careful with tools. 2 weeks after the burn, Ames calls him to medical for a follow-up examination. I am there when she removes his bone tag. The procedure takes longer this time, nearly an hour. Ames works slowly, cutting through scar tissue that has fused the tag to the surrounding muscle. When the tag finally comes free, Morgan's heart rate spikes on the monitor, but he does not discharge current. He sits upright on the exam table and looks at his wrist where the incision is being sealed. I do not remember before, he says. Ames sets the tag in a shielded container. Before what? Before I woke up in environmental. I remember the work, I remember the people, but I do not remember arriving. That is normal after a transfer. Is it? Ames does not answer. She finishes sealing the wound and hands Morgan a replacement tag in a sealed package. A standard ceramic implant with no hidden channels, no current, no connection to anything beneath the ship. Morgan takes it and leaves without asking more questions. Per new protocol, replacement tags are held for supervised implantation after verification. Ames adds the extracted tag to a collection she keeps in a locked drawer. There are 7 now, each one marked with a name and a date. She does not tell me what she plans to do with them. 1 month after the burn, I sit in my office with the ledgers spread across the desk. The numbers balance. 840 souls aboard Harbour Light, 31 pregnancies in progress. Food stores adequate for 43 years to planetfall with a 3% margin for crop failure. I write the new headcount in careful longhand, signing each page with my initials. Jonah Morgan is listed on the permanent roster, his name inked beside his assignment in environmental systems. So are the others, Drummond, Hahn, Gibson, all 41 new arrivals who walked out of a chamber that no longer exists and into lives they believe they have always lived. I close the ledger and lock it in the cabinet. The shard I cut from my own arm sits wrapped in cloth in my desk drawer. I have not shown it to Ames. I have not asked Pike to analyze it. I could cut deeper and find out what I am. Whether I am original crew born in transit with memories that belong to me, or whether I walked into Supply Bay 3 one morning with a file that fit too perfectly and a past I cannot verify. I do not cut deeper. The ship needs a quartermaster. It needs someone to count the rations, track the water, sign for the births and the deaths and the slow march toward planetfall. It needs someone who can balance the ledgers and make the hard calls and accept the losses when the math demands it. I can do that work whether I am original or fabricated. The duty does not change. The count does not lie. I leave my office and head for the crew commons. The evening meal is underway and the room is full. Crew sitting in clusters talking about shift trades and maintenance requests and the small gossip that fills the hours between work and sleep. At one table, Jonah Morgan sits with 3 environmental techs, laughing at something someone said. At another, Nora eats alone, her tablet open to yield reports. I sit across from her. Trellis 6 is holding, she says without looking up. She closes the tablet and meets my eyes. David Gibson transferred to another section. I have not seen him in 2 weeks. He is still aboard. I know. She picks at her meal. He asked if we could talk. I told him no. I do not tell her whether that was the right choice. Some questions do not have answers that help. The yield is stable, she says. We will make it. She returns to her meal, and I sit with her until the commons begins to empty. Then I head back to my quarters and sit at the desk with the wrapped shard in my palm. I could demand certainty. I could cut myself open and catalogue every piece until I know whether I am real or assembled. But certainty is a luxury the ship cannot afford. We are 43 years from planetfall with 840 mouths to feed and 31 futures growing in glass. The work continues whether I trust my own memory or not. I put the shard back in the drawer and close it. Tomorrow I will update the ration logs and check the water reclamation output. I will count the tools in Supply Bay 3 and verify that every wrench and pry bar is accounted for. I will walk the corridors and watch for discrepancies in the numbers, because the numbers are all we have and they do not lie. The horror has a body and a grave. The new arrivals have names and duties and lives they are learning to live without the memories that should accompany them. The children in the columns will be born into a ship that chose survival over innocence, and they will never know what it cost to keep them breathing. I am Malcolm Keane, quartermaster aboard Harbour Light. I track what enters and what leaves, who eats what, and who needs more. I write the count in longhand, and I sign my name at the bottom.